Femboys. You have definitely heard of these little guys from Twitter, memes, online discourse about the memes about the discourse about the memes is discourse, the discourse about the Discord in general, the discourse about memes having discourse at all, and then the discourse about femboys being discourse itself, and yada 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 yada. Despite all of that, femboys have slowly but surely just become a staple of online culture over the past few years, especially in the ever-dreaded anime community. You know, if the rampant discourse wasn't a dead giveaway about it already. But before we get into that train wreck, let's talk about, what are femboys? Where did they come from? Where did they go? Answer me, Cotton-Eyed Joe. I'm so sorry for the joke. It would not leave my brain space. I'm so sorry. And most importantly, why are they so popular amongst a certain demographic of male weebs that are a little bit you know? And I'm, of course, talking about the recently come to terms with their bisexuality or bi-curiousness weebs, not the other type of femboys. I don't have the emotional capacity to talk about those right now. Well, in my professional degree in psychology, in grad school to be a therapist, internet brain-rotted opinion, the reasons are far more deep and complex than just the aesthetic appeal of cute boys in skin-tight stockings, cute pinchable faces, all-encompassing endearing smugness. Though those certainly did not help the rising popularity and rise of a few other things, but we'll get to that later. Part 1. What is a femboy? Oh, gag me, oh my god. If you click this video, you probably already know what a femboy is, but for the sake of this video's flow, you're all gonna act clueless about it anyway, okay? Okay. To quote from the world's most reputable source on the internet, Urban Dictionary, a femboy is as follows. A femboy is a person typically under the age of 30 years who is biologically male. However, this person will often present himself in a very feminine manner. This behavior may be exhibited part of the time or all of the time. Femboys are also different from cross-dressers. Despite being feminine, femboys do not necessarily wear clothes designed for females, but this is very common. So, femboy as a term was actually coined all the way back in the 1990s, nearly 30 years ago. No, I do not feel old. Shut up. But according to an actual reputable source, dictionary.com, the word femboy emerged in the late 1990s. It began as a derogatory term used for a man who didn't adhere to traditional standards of masculinity. So it essentially started its life as just an alternative word to call someone a sissy or a wimp. Like back in the 90s, for all of my Zoomers out there who did not really understand the late 90s / early 2000s culture that us 90s babies had. God, I do feel old, never mind. Essentially, being a sissy or a wimp, or just being perceived as anything gay, was essentially a death sentence for you, like, in any capacity. So someone being called a femboy was nothing but an insult. There was no amount of, yes, I am a femboy at all. Not even a scrap. So we've spent all of this time actually talking about like what a femboy is in like theory. You know, femboy theory is something everyone knows, but we haven't really talked about characters that like embody this or like anyone who fills the trope. So think Rosato from the latest Fire Emblem game, or everyone's favorite drunk twink grandpa, Venti from Genshin Impact, or the character that introduced me to the trope when I was a kid, Naruko from classic shoujo and not at all a cult classic, totally everyone knows it, anime Fushigi Yugi. Love her, queen icon. She was serving fish when no one else was. And of course, there's the femboy alpha supreme himself, El Staffo. Everyone just soak it in. Just soak it in. I am sure you have seen this man attached to so many Twitter profiles saying the most, honestly, either the most like wholesome, like, oh my god, I support everyone, or the most war criminal shit you have ever seen in your life. No in between. There is a reason why the Astolfo profile picture horseshoe theory is a legitimate thing. Look it up. And these boys, especially Venti and Astolfo, have become very, popular in certain degenerate weeb circles. And by that, I mean basically every single bi-curious male weeb on the planet in the past 3 years has had some thoughts regarding these two in specific. Totally say-so thoughts I've seen on Twitter. No degeneracy at all. I can't even finish that with a straight face, my god. Hit straight. So, femboy started off as a term that was pretty much just a different way to call someone a masculine loser, or a sissy, a wimp, a ladyboy, which was my favorite one, has become just a pop culture symbol for any man who's just like erotically androgynous. That's a fun phrase I just coined, woo! But because we are talking about femboys in the obvious perspective of weebdom and anime, we should probably hop across all the way to Japan and find out where their version of femboy comes from. I'm sure there will be no controversies, different meanings, or cultural differences to find here whatsoever. God help me researching this. Part 2. Otokonoko. A fabulously controversial place to start. The modern day femboy boom wouldn't even be the tiniest, blippitiest blippity blip on anyone's radar without its genre foremother, the Otokonoko. Otokonoko roughly translates from Japanese as boy girl, or my favorite translation at this current moment for anything, boy princess. Which just has a certain je ne sais quoi, you know what I mean? Why'd I say that? We're keeping it in. The term Otokonoko actually originated from the Japanese visual novel fandom as a means to describe characters like the ones we previously talked about. But unlike its Western counterpart, Otokonoko is so controversial because it could literally mean anything that is just gender non-conforming at this point. The term can be applied to characters that we previously talked about, like the traditional Western standard for a femboy. So your Astolfos, your Ventis, or hell, Haku from Naruto, another OG femboy. But the term can also be used to apply to canonical trans women as well, which is I think you now see why the term's a little controversial. So think like Lily from Zombieland, Saga, Aluka from Hunter x Hunter, or Twitter's favorite girl, Brisket. Is that the inside joke? However, the single-handed reason that this trope became so popular is because of the classic 80s Shonen Jump manga and anime. Stop! Hibari-kun. So just a quick synopsis I stole from Wikipedia because I honestly don't want this to clog my video too much. Stop! Hibari-kun follows Kosaku Sakamoto, a high school student whose mother tells him on her deathbed to live with her friend and Yakuza boss, Ibari Ozora, and his family in Tokyo after she dies. Although Kosaku is initially unsure about his situation, he is relieved when he meets Ibari's 4 children, Tsumugi, Tsubami, the titular character, Hibari, and Suzume. Kosaku is initially super attracted to Hibari. He is shocked to learn that Hibari, la gasp, who looks and behaves as a young woman, was assigned male at birth. The shock, the horror, and the wacky rom-com shenanigans that ensue. So essentially, Stop Hibari-kun is a rom-com about a young man falling madly, deeply in love with a pretty boy in drag. Pause. At least that's what he assumes Hibari is. But looking deeper into just the anime and the manga itself, along with the mangaka, well, there's more than Hibari than initially meets the eye. However, no matter how you look at this series, it's so oddly progressive for a Jump manga, let alone one from the 80s. Like, I hesitate to say that I think something like this probably wouldn't be published nowadays by Jump, so it's just kind of wild to read about. And the manga was actually pretty popular, and it just sparked this whole entire wave of gender effery manga, which, you know, eventually got over here in the good old United States of America. We do kind of have to talk about the modern day significance of Hibari-kun before we get on to the good stuff. While I was researching this topic, I actually came across this fascinating article that explores just the Otokonoko character trope in general, which is called Prefiguring the Otokonoko Genre, and also an interview with the creator talking about their struggles of body dysphoria while creating Hibari-kun, in footage on screen right now. So despite Hibari-kun popularizing the trope of the femboy in Japan, I'd honestly more lean into the modern day interpretation of Hibari-kun actually being one of the very first representations of a trans girl in an anime. Also, a sidebar to this sidebar, we all know how big Shonen Jump series will occasionally just have a large spread of like all their characters in like these really cool like street fashions or in like Gucci and all this other stuff. Yeah, this long-standing trend was pretty much pioneered by Hibari-kun's mangaka. So everyone bow down to our Shonen Jump foremother, for she invented drip itself. Part 3. Herstory of cross-dressing online. So now that we have a basic history of the origins of the modern day femboy out of the way, I think it's time for us to start talking about the femboyization of the Western anime space. And may God help us all in that endeavor. When researching the topic of this video, I actually consulted a lot of psychological journals, and I also consulted a lot of journals specifically about gender, sexuality, and nerd culture. And there is actually a lot of papers on this subject, like way more than you might think. Because let me tell you, if there is one thing that academics love more than just writing inane topics, it's writing inane topic papers on stuff they're actually deeply interested in their private lives that they just love to pass off as scientifically relevant. I should know. I've done it so many times. And one of the many articles that I found that talks about this topic was Gender, Sexuality, and Cosplay, a case study of male to female crossplay by one Rachel Lang. So this article essentially follows a group of cosplayers who are male, but they prefer to dress as female anime characters. I mean, if you've been anywhere on like TikTok, you will know that's actually a huge thing, which I think is really interesting because this article and study came out in like 2012, and now a whole 11 years later, this phenomena has exploded. And in this article, she actually posits that there are some parallels to be made between dressing up in crossplay, which for the sake of this video, we will talk about in more like femboyish terms later on, and the art of drag, which will probably be its own video down the line, by the way, just to throw that out there. And how like a lot of people have come to like this sort of cosplay or just like this sort of aesthetic in general, because it's a really good blending of archetypical masculine and feminine images. And it like is really good at just decentering and then just like deconstructing a lot of like really basic and hegemonic gender norms about men, women, and what is straight and what is not. Okay, so you need to bear with me for this article title, and just note right off the bat, it's not even the worst one we're going to talk about today. You ready? Good. It's Becoming a Virtual Cutie, Digital Cross-Dressing in Japan. Let it sink in? Letting it soak? All right, cool. We're moving forward. So this article is actually where I got the definition for Otokonoko from. And also, this article, as it implies, actually talks about femboy VTubers and also cross-dressing VTubers. So essentially, people who are men and identify as men using either more feminine avatars or just straight up female avatars for VTubing. And the term that is used to describe these people are actually Bappiniku, which is a term that basically just means virtual bishoujo incarnation. It's all very isekai title. So think popular indie VTuber Joel or ex-Hollow Stars talent Kira, just to name a few. And Dale, the author of the article, actually explains that Japanese men seek to embody the position of a young girl because its unformed state of cuteness allowed for a seemingly infinite power for transformation. So essentially, some guys like the aesthetic of dressing up as a cute anime girl, or just loves to look at that stuff because they find the cross between their masculine selves and just the cute uber kawaii-ness of just some squishable anime girl just to be so appealing. These feelings can lead to improved self-perception and assertiveness. Most Bakiniku share their activities result in confidence, actually, and fulfillment in themselves, which is something they say that they just don't get in their normal lives. So this cross between the masculine and feminine just makes them overall happier, more functioning human adult men. Who knew embracing your feminine side is psychologically healthy? Which brings us to Part 4. The Psychology of Femboy Attraction. This article is so out there. I cannot even say this name in fear of being demonetized. Are you ready? You're not ready. This is a real scientific article in a legitimate scientific journal. Are we ready? We're not, but we're going anyway. Effeminate gay bottoms in the West. Narratives of pussy boys and boy wives on Tumblr. I'm sorry, I can't even. I can't say this even with a straight face, but like, yes, this is a real article. Yes, it's actually very well researched and actually relates to a lot with what we're talking about, but like, ooh, the author really chose violence. Also, this article just came out this year, so it's very topical. God help me. Okay, so as the article name implies, we're going to be talking about a more genuinely 18 plus charged version of a femboy. And for not having this video nuked off the face of this planet after I spent God knows how much time on it, I'm just going to refer to them as boy wives. As much as I want to refer to them as the other one because it's so funny. Oh my God, it's so funny. But no, boy wives are a more extreme version of femboys that essentially like the fantasy of living as a stay-at-home wife, but make it drag. So these online users actually use the medium of Tumblr, good old tungle.hell.com, to actually explore their more feminine sides, because all of them aren't actual like housewives. Because of course they aren't. That doesn't happen in real life. So exploring this more feminine identity for themselves is really liberating and actually helped a lot of them come to terms with their own sexuality and gender expression. Despite how extreme this is, it's actually really cool for an end result. I still refuse to get over the title though. Oh my God, I still refuse to get over the title. Oh, but speaking of actually exploring your gender and accepting yourself, that brings up our final article for the evening, or the afternoon, whenever the hell this goes up. So this article essentially polled and followed a group of closeted bisexual men and wanted to study the differences between their attraction towards more traditionally quote-unquote heterosexual female partners that they might have, and explore that with their attraction towards men. So many of these closeted bisexual men actually reported being dissatisfied in their relationships and with gender norms as a whole because they feel like they cannot be their true selves around themselves or their partners. Many of these men also went on to say they feel an attraction towards more feminine men, or I guess in this video's case, more femboys, for numerous different reasons. Not only because they're men and they're bisexual, so they're attracted to other men, doy, but also because these men are more feminine. They feel like they are the masculine ones, and they can be their own true masculine selves around other men. This article also hinges on the fact that a lot of these participants were closeted, and a lot of these men actually polled that the reason why they don't want to come out to their female partners or just the world or themselves in general, because they feel like that vulnerability and admitting to themselves that they are some shade of queer is just inherently a demasculating process, and they do not want to encroach on that gender norm with a 10-foot pole. They want to maintain the veil of heterosexuality as hard and fast as they can. In fact, many of these men stated before they came to terms with their own sexuality, they were attracted to a femininity as a construct. Whether that femininity was attached to a man or a woman, they were attracted to it. Which, don't get me wrong, that's not invalid, but a lot of them basically did the academic equivalent of no homo, bro. So these men actually stated that they feel like this deep and longing attraction towards more feminine men because it's a good and safe way to feel an attraction towards other men while also perceiving like this faux heterosexuality. So I just want to state this right off the bat just to prevent any miscommunications with this video. I think attraction towards feminine men is fine. Obviously there's a whole like stereotype in the queer community that there should be like no fats, no femmes, etc. So of course, having attraction towards more feminine men is 100% valid. Encouraged. I encourage it even. If you couldn't tell by my voice, I'm a not exactly the most masculine of men, so wink wink, nudge nudge, I encourage it. My closing thoughts. What started off as a derogatory term for men who did not fit into traditional masculine roles became a subversive and complex trope for anime characters, and then transformed again to a more modern day staple for weebs and just general culture online. And let's be real here, femboys are here to stay, mainly because femboys just have this certain appeal and aesthetic that just makes nerds go crazy. With what we talked about, how femboys are this perfect match between the masculine and the feminine, and it's a really good way for bisexual people and just or more gender questioning people to explore themselves and how they perceive themselves in the world. Also think that femboys will also not leave certain 18 plus sections of the internet because they're bisexual training wheels for nerds, okay? Let's be real. It's where they start to get to the other stuff. You start with femboy, then suddenly you're all the way in the bara section. Come on, let's be honest with ourselves. So anything that allows for a safe outlet for nerds to finally leave behind their angsty BS and go ham on a cute twink that lets them explore themselves, all for it. I encourage it. Cause my god, do these nerds need emotional relief. Hello, and thank you for watching my YouTube video. Congratulations, you made it towards the end, yay, woo, ah. You should like and subscribe if you like what you saw, maybe just a hint, nudge, nudge, maybe? And you should maybe also consider commenting, maybe. I would love to hear your recommendations on what I should talk next. I hope to make more videos like this in the future where I can combine my love of anime and manga, my brain rot, and also just my real life profession of being a therapist. So yeah, thank you guys. Oh, and next video topic will more than likely be about the origins of the yandere and the vilification of mental illness, or something more fun. Never know. I might change it 30 times. I changed the concept of this video 50, so God knows what future me will hold. Also, one last note before we go, that Hibari-kun was absolutely serving